Welcome everybody to Do You Believe, our live broadcast this evening. And I have my lovely co-host with me, Donna Raymond.
Hi, how are ya? Hello.
And I'm your host, Noreen. And tonight in the studio, we have Jeff Dwyer, Dr. Jeff Dwyer. Hi, Jeff.
Hi,
thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for the invitation. It's great to be here.
You're welcome.
In your studio.
Jeff, would you please tell the viewers about yourself?
Well, I consider myself a researcher, an author, and a paranormal investigator. So I wear three hats basically that come all under the same umbrella. I do research for my own books and for clients who come to me with various questions. Occasionally, production companies come to me with questions ranging from TV commercials that were made for last Halloween to The Haunting in Connecticut, which I was a consultant on for that movie. It came out, I think, 2009. And I write books. I have a Ghost Hunter series of books about paranormal locations throughout the United States, and also a textbook that just recently came out. And then I do paranormal investigations. I've done a few with you.
Oh, yeah. You were an honorary member of Paranormal Zone TV.
Yes, we went to Brookdale Lodge and the Hornet, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we had some great investigations. And Jeff is a fabulous historian. He would do when he would come out with us, Jeff would do all the history, all the legwork, and we would present that. Jeff would present that to the viewers. You were fabulous.
Thank you. I think it's really important to research the ghosts you're looking for. I think it could be a more focused investigation if you have historical background. So I get into genealogy and sometimes investigate. Go to grave sites and read epitaphs, go to obituaries, look up family histories, and sort of know who you're after. I think that's a better way to go.
Oh yeah, you were fabulous
Thank
at
you.
that. Now Jeff has, many of you probably have his books. He's written the whole ghost hunting series for what?
Well, I've covered San Francisco Bay Area, Los Angeles and Southern California, New Orleans and the lower Mississippi, and that was a lot of fun to write. Seattle and the Puget Sound area, California's gold rush country, California's wine country, and more recently a second edition of the San Francisco Bay Area. This just came out last fall, and this is an updated version of the San Francisco Bay Area. So this covers everything around the whole Bay Area.
So these are all the haunted locations in the Bay Area.
A lot of them.
What are some of the sites in there?
Well, I include the North Bay, and up in the North Bay, places in Vallejo, including the hospital where I work, and parts of Sonoma and the lower Napa Valley and the Marin County area. And then I go down through San Francisco, including Alcatraz, of course, but working my way down the peninsula, all the way down to Santa Clara and San Jose, looking at Winchester Mystery House, a lot of structures in Los Gatos and Saratoga. Working my way across the South Bay and coming up through Fremont to the old Mission San Jose, which is really in Fremont. Then up through the East Bay to the Hornet in Alameda and places at UC Berkeley and in Oakland. And that covers the whole area. And then I kind of go outward a bit too. This book includes places out in Antioch and out in Clayton, places as well.
What's in Antioch?
Out in Antioch, that's the area where the Somerville area is and the Norton Mines.
Oh, yeah. I've been up there.
It's not really in the city limits of Antioch, but it's out in that general direction. Yeah. Nortonville's really interesting because there's hardly anything left of the towns that were there, but the graveyard is still there, and it's really interesting to go to.
Way up on the hill, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Roseville Cemetery. Yeah, it's a hike up there,
Yeah.
and especially if it's warm, you have to watch out for rattlesnakes. But it's really an interesting place to go to. So this book tries to cover the whole San Francisco Bay Area, but it doesn't cover every place because there's just too many, as you well know. And in fact, when I finished the manuscript, my publisher came to me for the first time in writing the 8-book series. They said, guess what? This one is a little too long, so you have to trim it down. So I had to trim out some of the spots that were painful because I had researched them and gone there personally and investigated them sometimes several times, and it was really tough to delete them from the final manuscript.
So you writing about the haunted locations, did you also talk about what goes on at the location, the hauntings, and who haunts it and whatever?
Yeah, every entry in this book, and there's about 100 entries in this book, I include background material, which is history and geography, how to get there, things to look out for, what structures might be there. Then I include information about other investigators and what they may have discovered there, because there's a lot of things on the internet now and a lot of things in other sources. So I'll indicate what other people have experienced there. Then I'll write about what I've experienced. And then sometimes very often I try to give direction to what people might look for when they go to that place. You know, maybe EVP works really well there. Maybe something else works really well there. Maybe dowsing rods would be the thing to use. So I make suggestions for that.
You didn't bring your rods, did you?
I didn't bring my rods. I didn't think we'd be dowsing in here. I guess we could.
We could.
What about rods?
Do you?
Got the ones I make.
Oh, yeah, I'm really into dowsing rods.
Why don't we do a little experiment
Sure.
later? You know, I was gonna never mind. Jeff, how can they get this book?
Well, all my books are available on Amazon.com and other booksellers too. You can get it through BarnesandNoble.com. A lot of bookstores carry them, independent bookstores in the cities mentioned in the book. So if you're in Southern California or Seattle, for instance, or up in Sacramento, the Gold Rush country, you can go into a bookstore and ask about this. And if they don't have it on the shelf, they can get you any of my books very quickly. There's a distributor out here on the West Coast that can get them in just a couple days.
Now, Jeff, you have your newest book that's out.
Yeah, that's this.
Okay, this is Jeff's newest book.
This is The Art and Science of Paranormal Investigation, and it's basically a textbook.
Okay, so what I want to do is I have some other things I want to talk to you about, but before the show is over, I want to go with you through this book, and I want to talk about paranormal investigations.
Sure.
But I want to do a little fun thing first.
Okay.
Okay, I want to know, how was it? Now, Jeff, tell them about the show that you did with Ghost Adventures.
Oh yeah, I met up with Ghost Adventures cast down at Winchester Mystery House, and this was last August. Winchester Mystery House is a place that I've investigated quite a bit before, largely because I've done book signings there, and I've gotten to know the manager and the staff. So they have allowed me to get into places that most people can't go, and so it's been really fun to go in and poke around the basement and get up into some of the attic spaces and places like that. So I think it's because of that when Ghost Adventures planned to film at Winchester Mystery House, my name was brought up by the management and I got invited to participate in the filming. So I went down there and I found out it was a lot of fun. I have to say that the three guys, Zach and Aaron and Nick, are really nice, a lot of fun, and they work very diligently, they work very hard, but they're always ready for a laugh and a joke. Always. And they don't take themselves too seriously. I think that kind of shows up in some of the shows that they produce, that they can laugh at themselves. And especially I found Zach to be an interesting guy because he's sort of evolved as the leader of the group now. And he's prone to theatrics, so we all know that if you watch the show, he has the faces and the voices and the gestures and all that. And I found that he will do that, but he's very smart, very quick-witted. You can tell him a few things and a few facts about what you've uncovered at the place, and he's very, he really wants to know everything. He can cut right to the chase and ask you some pretty tough questions, and you give him the answers, and then he can walk over in front of a camera and just roll off the tongue with all this stuff that he can do in one take, and it just shows up on TV one night. He's very quick, he has a good mind, and he seems to be able to remember everything.
Wow.
Very sharp. Very nice, very fun. So it was great. We filmed my part of it. I was down there in the middle of the afternoon until late at night. And they talk about at the entry to the show that it's just the three of them with two guys with a camera. And it really is just those two guys with cameras. However, there's a big production staff.
Yes.
There's the producer and the line producer and the location manager and 6 or 8 production assistants and the sound guy and this and that and the other thing. And I think they pulled up in about 3 or 4 vans, and it looked to me about 15 people getting out.
Yeah.
But a lot of these people are sort of in the background supporting things and really not directing. Zach goes in and he talks to us, he talks to the manager, a few other things, and And Nick and Aaron will set up their shots almost without talking to each other. They seem to know what the other guy's going to do. And they just roll it. And they just film it. And it just flies away. And it goes fast. And it's a lot of fun.
To have that rapport with your other
Yeah, and like I said, the other 10 or 15 people around, they're supporting, but kind of quietly, and you almost don't notice that they're there, and it goes pretty quick.
Now, you were doing an investigation with them, weren't you?
Yeah, in fact, about 2/3 of what we filmed there actually didn't make the cutting room. It didn't make the final cut, actually.
Oh, it did?
Yeah, they were there 3 days. And they make it look like they kind of breezed in for the afternoon, did a few fun things, and stayed the night, and then they were gone. They were there 3 days. And during that time, they tried to do this experiment where they were connected up with somebody back in Kentucky, back at Bobby Mackey's. They had a group back there, and they had a couple people up in Virginia City. And I think the experiment was to see if spirits in these other locations could move to the Winchester Mystery House and manifest.
Oh,
Because
wow.
it's believed that that's what Sarah Winchester did. That she met in her seance room with spirits of people who were killed by Winchester rifles
Right.
throughout the American West. You know, cowboys, Indians, others. Okay, so the idea was that she was speaking to these spirits that were killed hundreds of miles away. So what the
So
ghost...
she was actually doing it, or I thought she had a woman who would come
Well, she did most of her seances by herself.
by herself.
Yeah.
Okay, good to
Mhm.
know.
Yeah. So the experiment that the ghost hunters tried to do was to get spirits in Kentucky or Virginia City to manifest. And they had it at Winchester Mystery House. And there were some technical devices set up there that were supposed to detect this spirit manifestation. But I think the experiment didn't go well at all. It just
Didn't
looked
show
to me, well, it was technically flawed. They had trouble with the connection to Virginia City. And although things were going on in Kentucky, nothing was going on in San Jose at Winchester Mystery House at the time. So it didn't work out. And I had spoke to the producer about doing it the way Sarah Winchester did, actually doing a seance in the seance room. And the suggestion just didn't take.
Oh, that was fabulous.
It would have been the thing to do.
Yes.
Because it's believed that that seance room sits over the intersection of ley lines, and that allows spirits to manifest in that particular location.
Well, now, what's a ley line?
These are naturally occurring lines of electromagnetic energy within the earth, and there's thousands of them everywhere. But where they intersect, the energy is strong, and sensitives like myself can detect these things. And we believe that in the seance room there's an intersection of two or more of these ley lines, and that intersection has created the proper electromagnetic environment for spirits to manifest in that spot and communicate. And that may be a real important way of conducting paranormal investigations if you beforehand try to locate these ley lines.
Now, did she know that when she made the room
No.
where it was? Or
I don't think
just
she
happened
knew
to
it.
go there.
Yeah, I don't think she knew it.
Wow.
I would be very surprised if she had any idea about that at all. But it's just fortuitous that her seance room was built in that one spot.
Yeah.
Now, it might have been built there because spirits told her to put it there.
Right.
You know, that's
Because
possible.
they had told her where to put each room?
Exactly.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay.
They dictated the crazy floor plan and design of this mansion that at one time had 600 rooms. And that now has 168 because of fire and earthquake.
Right.
But so the seance room is at a spot where perhaps the spirits dictated it. Or maybe Sarah just sort of felt that energy there and said, this is the spot, let's build the seance room here. Whatever, that was my suggestion, to have a seance room and try to get spirits to come from other locations and manifest, but it didn't hit. But, you know, the idea is still on the table, and maybe sometime another group can go in there and do that very same thing, have a seance in Sarah Winchester's seance room. That would be fun to do.
God,
That
love
would
to
be.
do that.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
I'd love to do that. Not and video it instead of filming it live, but I mean a live.
It would be
Wow.
fun to video
Yeah.
it and then edit that out.
Yeah.
Because you'd want to spend a lot of time there.
Could you get us in there?
You know, it's possible because the manager I know quite well, and a lot of other people down there. So I'll look into that, and who knows, maybe on this show you will see a seance from Sarah Winchester's seance
Oh
room.
yeah,
That would
that
be
would be
awesome.
fabulous.
Yeah.
That would be fabulous.
It would.
Now, so Now, you did an investigation with them.
Yeah.
Did you get anything?
Well, we roamed around, and we got on the switchback staircase, which is this little staircase that goes from one floor to the one above, but it switches back about 5 or 6 times because the risers are only 2 inches high. Sarah Winchester had arthritis, and she couldn't bend her hips very much, so to get up these stairs, she could only handle these 2-inch risers, so it switches back. This staircase lies right over a strong ley line. So I located that for the team, and we filmed in there, and Zach told me that he senses the energy at that spot too.
Is he sensitive?
I think he is, but he doesn't make a lot of it other than hearing audio, that he also picks up on audio recorders. He hears things and sees things, but he doesn't make a point of being sensitive or psychic, but I think he is, yeah. So we found this switchback because right across every passage there's this line, and when you step across the line you get this instant dizziness and nausea, which is a prime sign of stepping on an electromagnetic field. You go a step beyond that and this disappears. And you go around the next way, come back across, and you get the same thing. So 5 times you get the nausea and the dizziness as you go from one floor to the next. And Zach found that too. And we filmed in there, and he would step on the line and report his symptoms and step off and so forth. We went down to the basement and did some investigations, but as I said, that got trimmed out because of all the time devoted to the experiment from Kentucky and Virginia City.
Oh, that's too bad. Now, Ghost Hunters hasn't been in there, have they?
Yeah, Ghost Hunters went in there, and they reported that they didn't really pick up on much at all. They hauled all their equipment out here from Rhode Island and set it up. I think they filmed it at the same time they were out here doing the Queen Mary and Alcatraz too.
That's right.
So they kind of hit a lot of spots in one trip. But they went in there, and they didn't have good access to the place, so they came away thinking that there's not much going on in Winchester. But I still think that tourist locations like Winchester Mystery House are definitely haunted. I really do. Every time I've gone off and wandered around in there, I have some really strange experiences. Pick up audio, feeling the presence of people kind of standing close, touching sometimes. And I have a picture, I think it's still on my website, of Sarah Winchester that was taken in the Oriental bedroom at Winchester Mystery House.
Did you take that picture?
I didn't take it. A friend took it and passed it to me to use in whatever way I wish to use it. It's really interesting because Sarah died in the house, but she's buried in Connecticut with her baby daughter and her husband.
Oh, that's right.
And so a lot of people think, well, she's gone back east somewhere.
Why would she stay in Connecticut? She had no tie there.
Well, yeah, she didn't really.
The house was her life.
Yeah, the house was her life.
So
exactly.
where would you go back to is the house.
I think she would go to the house because she was so tied to it, and also that was where her friendly spirits were too, which would be nurturing when she crossed over. So I think she's still there. I really do, and I think that there needs to be more of an effort to look for her. I think people haven't looked for her because the impression is that these tourist locations are probably not very haunted. But
I would think like bars. Bars are one of the most greatest places to go to get activity because all that wonderful energy of people having a good time, that the spirits love that. They use that energy to make things happen. Mm-hmm. So a tourist spot, Alcatraz, a lot of those places are great food. I call it food for them, but energy for them to, play with.
Yeah, and I don't think the addition of modern amenities like electric lights and air conditioning systems and things like that are going to drive a ghost away.
No.
I really don't. If anything, it might attract them and arouse curiosity, if nothing more. But then again, maybe the electromagnetic fields that we have in our homes, in our restaurants and bars, might be a draw to them too, because that's a way they could manifest on our plane.
Now, you also did a show on the Queen Mary, didn't you?
Yeah, I did a show for Comcast TV on the Queen Mary a few years ago called The Ghost of the Queen Mary, and that was a lot of fun too. It's like a lot of TV shows. It's not scripted. You just kind of, the director says, action, and you kind of go with it. And it turned out really good because I didn't quite know how Comcast wanted to produce this, but when I got on the ship, there was a big production company there that had flown out from Philadelphia to film this, and then I had an idea that it's not going to be just a camera guy, a sound guy, and one producer. It's going to be a big bunch of people. And but they stayed out of the way very nicely. They had 4 cameras running and sound and all the support. And we went through the first class swimming pool down to the engine room to watertight door number 13. And we went to a part of the ship that used to be a kitchen, and now it's just literally in ruins. I mean, it hasn't been restored. I didn't know that there was a part of the ship that was still just like it was when the ship stopped service. But yeah, it hasn't been cleaned up at all. There are remnants in there of the kitchen that was used in World War II. And that's where a cook was beat up by servicemen, and he was burned and died of his injuries. And so we ran across, I used my psychic methods of investigation. I ran across spirits in each of those locations. And one of the things that was really interesting that I think came out really well in the TV show is that when we started in the engine room, and they said, stay right here for a few moments. And I just kind of poked around. I was touching the knobs and the handles because that's how I kind of pick up on the vibe of a place. And I use psychometry to get in touch with an era or something like that. And I was waiting, and the crew went down the end of this long passageway and set up the cameras at the other end. And they said, okay, come down here. And I didn't know the cameras were running. And I'm walking along, just kind of talking about, well, I sort of feel this, and I think there's people walking on this catwalk up here, because I was hearing that. And I walked through this passageway. I didn't know it was watertight door number 13. But it was this instant feeling of dread and fear. This is where a man was crushed to death in 1963 when the watertight door slammed shut. I didn't know that they were having me walk through that at that point. And the expression on my face came across very clearly on the TV show. It was a big surprise. It was a big surprise to me because I didn't know where I was at that time. So I was glad that came out well.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. And every time I stepped through there, stepped back, I'd feel that dread and that misery and that pain, and it was almost frightening to step through that door each time. It was a really exciting thing, and every once in a while this show is rebroadcast, and so if you take Comcast as your carrier, look at Paranormal TV, and you'll see the Ghost of the Queen Mary.
Yeah, isn't Paranormal TV on like Astound as well? Don't they have that as well?
I think so.
Yeah, they do.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Jeff, do you want to give everybody your website?
Oh yeah, it's really easy. It's just www.jeffdwyer.com, and the last name is spelled D-W-Y-E-R. And I put new things on there every week. Every Sunday I post the paranormal question and answer of the week.
Nice.
People send me questions and I try to give an answer. And then usually Wednesday or Thursday I post something called Paranormal Activity, which is an excerpt from one of my books or some other information about a paranormal location that you can go to and try to pick up on something.
Now, you also have access to that haunted winery in Napa, Bartholomew
Bartholomew Park Winery, yeah, that's another great place.
Wahoo!
Yeah, it's great because it is because when you get done investigating, they always give you a bottle of wine to take home.
Oh, no wonder you like it.
This place is in Sonoma, which is just over the hill from Napa. It's kind of the quiet wine country. You know, Sonoma is really the quiet wine country. Napa is more formalized wine country. But Sonoma is really pretty laid back, and the Bartholomew Park Winery is a really great place to go because it's got a great history. The building that the winery is housed in was constructed in 1920, and it was basically a women's home, but that term is not really correct. What it was is a place where all the unwed mothers from San Francisco were rounded up, sent by their families out of town to get pregnant and have their babies at this home in Sonoma, where it wouldn't embarrass the families of San Francisco.
Oh my goodness.
And as you might expect, there were a lot of abortions, and there were probably a lot of deaths of not only the infant, but the mother in childbirth.
Right.
So for about 6 or 8 years that went on. Then it evolved into a women's prison.
Oh!
Oh my goodness, I didn't know any of
Then
that.
the women were moved out, and it became a home for men and boys with mental disorders.
Oh,
It was kind of a forerunner of the Sonoma Developmental Facility, which is over on the west side of
I know
town.
what that is.
And then it became, I think, 1952, the Sonoma Valley General Hospital.
Oh my God, I
Yeah.
didn't know. Oh my God.
So, and it's
It was
really,
never a brothel.
it was never.
I missed that.
That's the one thing that it wasn't, I
Was
guess.
not, wow.
So now it's a winery, and it's a really neat winery to go to because part of it is a museum, and you can see photographs of when it was a hospital and when it was of these other facilities. And you can go down in the basement, which is where they used to take the dead bodies. They call it the morgue. They took
It was
the bodies
cold.
down there.
So
It
cold.
was cold, and they would kind of get them in a casket, and then there's a casket chute that would go right up through the side of the building to a wagon outside. And so they just draw the casket right up through the chute. And this is a really good spot to do EVP work and anything you really want to do down there. You know, infrared video, you'll get something down there. And then on the second floor is where the surgery used to be. You can go up there and get lots of things. And on the main floor, there's everything down there. I've had books move, briefcase get thrown across the floor. I was filming that with NBC News once, and my briefcase had a flap on it, and the flap would go up and down a couple times like this. And the producer of NBC News stopped everything. He says, "No tricks, Dwyer. I don't want any tricks while we're doing this." I said, "I didn't do anything." And they went over there and they literally took my briefcase apart, pulled everything out there, looking for some sort of mechanical
Oh my
device.
God.
There was nothing there.
Oh my.
I said, "This is for real. This is what you get at Bartholomew Park Winery."
Oh.
So did
wow.
they like people coming there to do investigations,
Well-
or they kind of frown upon that?
Well, you can get in there, but you have to contact the tasting room manager, and he's very open to this. He is not a believer in the paranormal. Very nice guy, but not a believer in the paranormal. But very accepting and very willing to let some people poke around in there. So it's possible. It's not something that you can just kind of
Show
walk
up.
in and announce I'm a ghost hunter and let me see your attic and let me see your basement, because that probably isn't going to work. But he has allowed groups like Sonoma Spirit, headed by Jackie Gainey, to go in there, and a few other groups to go in there, and he lets me in there whenever I want to go.
Yeah,
But
that's
you know, in a lot of places I go to, especially places I write about in my books, I don't announce my intentions or my presence. I just go in and I'll walk around, and we probably all do this. I mean, if I hear about a haunted bar in Clayton, for instance, I'm not going to first call up the manager and tell him I'm a ghost hunter, can I come in? I'll probably go there, be a
Right.
patron, maybe chat with a waitress or somebody like that, you know, and find out what's going on, and try to get that unbiased impression first. Because some places I went to years ago, I first announced myself. I'd say, I'm a ghost hunter, can I come and look around? As soon as you get in the door, people want to start telling you stories.
Oh my gosh,
And
yeah.
almost biasing my impressions. So I kind of go in without hearing that first. And then I'll get a vibe and I'll say, well, you know, walking through that door over there, I got this weird feeling. There's a cold draft over there. And you say something like that, and the busboy or the waitress will say, well, yeah, that's our ghost, you know.
Yeah.
And, oh, really? You have a ghost? And you can pretend to be very innocent about it, and yet they want to tell you. So you can kind of get this information without, you know, biasing the situation. So I go to a lot of places like that.
Now, a couple of years ago, you told me that you were going to the Hearst Castle. Did you ever get down there?
Yeah, I've been down there, and that's a place where you can't announce your intentions at all, because they do not want to become known as a haunted venue at all.
Right.
It's owned by the state of California, and I'm actually surprised that they allowed a picture of Hearst Castle on the cover of my Monterey book, because they did allow that. What shocked me when my publisher told me that they allowed that, but they didn't want to have a book signing or anything else down there.
Oh, well, that's too bad.
Which is really too bad. But that's a place where you have to go through it with a group. You go to the tourist center, you get on a bus, they take you up the hill, and they march you around. And groups are kind of large, maybe 30 people, and there's often two docents, one in front and one kind of in the back.
Make sure you don't
Yeah.
wander off.
Yeah, and I always kind of slip to the back of the group, you know, and I might just pretend I'm trying to frame up a picture of an antique or something and hope that the second docent kind of passes by. Very often they will do that after a while. If they get the impression that you're just kind of okay. And that's when you can pull out your audio recorder and do a quick EVP.
And did you do
stuff.
that?
I do some of that stuff, yeah. I've gotten a lot of things. I've gotten laughing and music and the sound of people dancing and glasses clinking together like parties, which they have a lot of parties at that place. A lot of parties.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
active all the time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What did you feel? What did you feel over there?
Yeah, quite a few. You know, there's a lot of spots where you'll feel people pressing close to you. Like you'll walk into a room and you get that impression it's really crowded all of a sudden. And if you can linger there for a few minutes and block out other sounds around you, you can pick up that impression of a party going on or an animated conversation among people.
Like the Ride Hotel. Have you been to the Ride? I think you and I talked about that the other time.
Yeah.
Downstairs,
Yeah.
where they're still dancing, and,
Yeah.
and there's a crazy piano player and the kids, and you just feel like, I remember they didn't tell me anything about it. I went down there. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a party! And I was being asked if I want to drink, have a drink, dance, you know, and it was like amazing. So I did. I looked foolish, but I was dancing on the dance floor. And so many people down there,
Yeah.
just constantly partying and having a good time. It's like New Year's Eve every night there.
That place must have been pretty wild in its day.
Yes.
Because it's remote.
Yes.
You know, you're out there in Sacramento Delta,
Yeah.
and they must have been able to get away with a lot back
Yeah.
in the Prohibition era. You know, the Sacramento River's there, so bootleggers could bring their whiskey down real easily under the fog in the night and unload it. And it's so far away from Sacramento that I think probably the police just turned away from it. And,
I think they have, like most speakeasies, they had tunnels. They would tell us. We did a weekend event. Devin Sisk and I would do a weekend event, and before they sold it. And but they were telling us about tunnels, I believe. And Devin, if you're listening and I'm wrong, I apologize. But I think there's tunnels that go down to the Delta, and they would bring the booze in underground and then bring it up into. So
I wouldn't be surprised if there are tunnels. I wouldn't want to go in them right now. It's probably unsafe.
I don't know. It's
That's
going to be
scary.
exciting though. Huh?
It would be exciting. You know, there's tunnels in a lot of places. There's tunnels in Seattle and San Francisco and Portland. And Benicia has got tunnels. Yeah, and New Orleans has tunnels too. And just some of them are a little bit scary.
So
most of your books around the Bay Area?
Well, yeah, pretty much so. I've got Los Angeles, which covers Southern California, and I wrote a New Orleans book because my publisher's in New Orleans. And I thought, well, it's the mecca for ghost hunters and paranormal investigators for the most part.
Right.
So I thought, well, I'll do that, and I wrote that book. But otherwise, I'm kind of West Coast oriented, so Los Angeles and Monterey and
What's
San
going
Francisco.
on up in Seattle?
Seattle and the Puget Sound, that's a really good area. That area, resembles San Francisco Bay Area
Yeah.
so much because of the Puget Sound looks just like San Francisco Bay, and the streets of Seattle look a lot like parts of San Francisco. So
I would say Seattle's like San Francisco, only on volume. It's so calm up there.
it has a peaceful ambience in a lot of ways. It's got a lot of old buildings. It has a history that's similar to San Francisco. They were affected by a gold rush. Theirs was the 1890s. Ours was more like 1850s. They've had earthquakes. They've had fires. They've had streets rebuilt. They've had mountaintops cleaned, shaved off, and the mountainous terrain flattened out. So they've got all that. They've got their underground city there too. San Francisco has a little bit of that. It's a little hard to get into.
You went into the tunnels. Was it in was it that Victorian, the Queen Anne? Did they have tunnels? Didn't they have tunnels?
There's a
down
tunnel
there?
under there. Yeah.
Did you get in there?
Yeah, it's a little ways. You can't. Most people you can't get in there.
Weren't we there once?
We were there.
Didn't we go down?
No, we didn't go. They wouldn't let us.
Oh, I thought we were down in that area though.
No, we didn't go in the tunnel.
Okay.
A lot of the older buildings up in that part of San Francisco had tunnels. The Vertigo Hotel has tunnels too. When it was a speakeasy.
Oh, I never heard.
Yeah, that's just down the street a few blocks. Yeah, that was used in the Alfred Hitchcock movie. That's what they call it, the Vertigo Hotel now. But a lot of places up in San Francisco had tunnels. Yeah, Seattle's tunnels are really neat because you can go on the underground tour, and it's another one of those situations where you sort of lag behind, and you can do EVP and other things. And it's in a state of arrested decay. They built safe walkways through there, but there's just a lot of junk left there from people in the 40s and 50s who were doing drugs down there, or prostitution or gambling. That's just kind of left there. So you go down there and it's really got a nice spooky atmosphere. But there's a lot of spirits down in that part of Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
They're just still down there. Yeah, it's like they don't even know they're dead. They're still partying down there and doing business, things like that.
Isn't that what ghosts do anyway? Especially at the Brookdale.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's a neat place.
That is a
Yeah,
neat place, yeah.
yeah. I mean, I've heard. I can't say that it's Sarah. Everybody says it's Sarah, but I mean, I can't say that it's her. But I've heard that for the first time, the last time I was there, she actually said something to me. I was going over the Honeymoon Bridge there, and I was by myself where the team was setting up, and I heard this little girl's voice. I have no idea what she said to me, but she's never talked to me before, ever. And then we heard with our own ears, we heard dishes, clicking,
Yeah.
and we heard people talking and partying, and we had heard that with our own ears.
There's in that big dining room. There's what I call sound bursts at times. You can walk around and you kind of get the background sound of the creek flowing through there. You have to kind of cancel that out, and you cancel out anything else. And it takes a little bit of time, a little concentration. And once you can kind of cancel that out, all of a sudden you get these bursts of glasses hitting together, or a burst of conversation that'll come on for a second or two or three, then it's gone again. And those, I think, are environmental imprints, possibly ghosts, but imprints that are left behind.
I think
just
from the
sort of
rock and the
surface.
water would hold that kind of a thing in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's granite there,
Yeah.
which is a really good enticement, and it's a good medium for retaining imprints, and then the water flowing through there too. It's great. I told you about my experience seeing Sarah when I was a kid. I went to Brookdale
Yes.
Lodge when we used to stay there, and I think I was about 12 or so, and I was down at the water's edge, and I felt a person pressing close to me, and I thought it was my sister, who was about 5 years younger than me, and I was about to turn and tell her that, just back off, I don't want you to fall in the water, and I turned and just saw this blonde girl in a white dress, and then just then my mother called to me, and there's the patio is kind of above the creek, about 6 or 8 feet. And I looked up, and my mother was up there telling me to get away from the water, and my sister was standing next to my mother. And I turned, and this person here was gone now.
Aww.
But I think it was Sarah pressing close to me at that point.
Oh God.
Yeah. So I think she's still there.
Yeah. Well, there is a little girl there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's been seen in the mermaid room and the bar area where that four-sided fireplace is, and running across that bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been a while since I've been there.
Mm-hmm.
I probably will never go back. But we did Channel 5 the same night that
We did. No, you guys were a
did
different
it.
night.
Yeah, they did Channel 5.
We were at the
Wright Hotel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was all put together in that eye on the
Yeah,
back.
yeah. It's on my website.
That was awesome,
Jeff did Eye on the Bay with us with Paranormal Zone TV
Nice.
on the Halloween, 2 years ago.
That was Halloween 2010.
Yeah, 2 years ago.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was fun. And, they nicely re-edited our section from Brookdale Lodges. The producer sent us that, too, which I like, because my daughter played the ghost of Sarah Winchester in that production. And a lot of what she did originally was not in the TV broadcast, but they put it back in the video for us. So,
Nice.
and she was happy about that. She became a TV star at her school
Aw.
because the teacher showed it in class, and she thought that was great fun.
Yeah, that was the second time around. Was nice that they had done for us. I
Yeah.
think I've got the CD for that. I'll
Yeah.
have to play which one it is.
Okay. They were up at Preston Castle too. That
Oh.
same producer up there.
Yes.
Yeah. Did they
Yeah.
produce anything from that? I never
I
saw.
think they're still working with Doug and Devin.
Oh,
I
good.
think, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, we were at Preston Castle together
Yeah.
last November for Doug Carnahan's paranormal event, and that was really fun. It was really cold.
I wish you could have stayed for the investigation.
Well, I was starting to get frostbite.
Yeah, it was cold. Well, I was telling Noreen, I felt for you because you hung out the whole day because you were one of the last speakers, which I think is good on their part because everybody stuck around to listen to you speak.
Well, it was
wonderful.
Thank you. The building has no heat
No,
at all.
cement
It's
floors.
exposed to the elements,
Yeah.
and it was November, and it was getting really, really cold. And I just, I'm not somebody who can really tolerate cold that well. I spent a winter in Montana and a winter in North Carolina, so I used to ski, but still, when I spend 8 hours in a place, it just gets to a point where I'm starting to just kind of get cold. So I didn't stay the night, but I stayed till about 8 o'clock or so. But it was a really good conference, and I got to poke around the Preston Castle a bit on
Intense
my own.
place. I ran into quite a
Yeah.
few boys and some very tragic stories there.
Yeah. Well, I like that exercise that you had us do, and it was amazing to me because,
I make it work.
well, we had, 80 people or so in a room, and Donna had us all stand up and gave us these little plumb bobs. I don't know exactly what they're called, but they're like dowsing rods, but
Pendulums.
they're pendulums.
Pendulum.
And I think a lot of people were skeptical. They're thinking, all right, well, we're going to practice this technique, but I don't think much is going to happen. But it was amazing
It really
the
was.
communication we got.
It really was. I was running around the room going from group to group, and some had dowsing rods that I brought, that I made. A little plug. Anyway, and I was amazed at how many people who'd never had anything happen, especially men who are really resistant.
Oh, yeah.
They're wonderful. They're like, oh my God, do you see that? Oh my gosh, do you see this? I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. It was fabulous.
And it was so interesting because in the group I was in, we were asking rather specific questions, and you would get a very specific movement of the pendulum. And it wasn't just something random from a breeze that might blow through the place. There was no breeze in there. I mean, there's a small door, and that was closed. There were so many people standing around that any breeze that might come through a crack in the wall wouldn't make it into the center of the group at all.
But it was really, because I was talking about that you didn't have to be in a certain place to make them come to you. You just need to be open to wanting them. And I'm telling you, and I bet you felt it too.
Oh, yeah.
That room got full.
It did.
We had all of these just spirits coming in, the boys and whoever else, but it just got full of, around the outer part of all these groups, really wanted to communicate. And I mean, that kind of, I had a hard time being there because I have a son who is 19, and many of these boys were around teenagers and younger, and their stories would come in, and it broke my heart. And, but they still wanted people to interact with them, talk to me.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, we asked questions about whether they were happy at this place or sad, and some remarked they were sad, and we asked if, were you bad, and they answered yes.
Yeah.
Did you commit murder? Yes. Some of them answered yes. So it was really revealing. It was a great exercise. It was hard. I had to follow you, and then I also had to follow Barry, who had this amazing video and some pictures of amazing ghost pictures that I'd never seen before. So at the end of the day, I was not only cold, but I had to get up and follow some great speakers, great presentations. But it was still fun for me to be there.
I bet it was.
I really
well, I
liked
think
it.
the people hung out because I just saw this long line of people getting autographs from you and wanting your books and photographs, and then you were wonderful, wonderful.
Well, it was one of my favorite things to talk about. I'm going to talk about it again up in Oregon in March, and going up there the second week of March for the Oregon City Paranormal Conference. And I'm going to talk again about what it would be the best technical device to use for paranormal investigation.
Okay, well that brings me to
That's
this
something
book.
Yay!
That's a big part of what the book's about.
Okay, so Jeff,
Yeah.
do the honors.
Okay. The Art and Science of Paranormal Investigation. This is a textbook which covers not only the technical approach, but also a psychic approach. And in addition to those two important areas, it includes information about how to research the historical background, the geography, geology even of a place, how to look into criminal records of ghosts you might be looking into, how to research everything, how to interview witnesses, and how to take that information and put it together and focus your investigation. And then it concludes with a few chapters on ghost groups or paranormal groups and how to get organized and ethical considerations and things of this sort, and how to deal with news media and law enforcement as well.
Oh, good.
Yes, because there are some groups out there that need a little bit of help in that direction.
Yeah.
I've got a stack of newspaper clippings at home of ghost hunters that have been arrested for breaking and entering or damaging property, and it gives us all a bad name, and we have to be really careful about getting permission to enter these places.
And I think any places that you talk about in all of your books, you never break the law. You never jump fences and go under things, and you don't have to.
You don't have to, yeah, because you can speak to the people who own a place who are in charge, management of bars and restaurants, for instance. And a lot of them are actually, even if they're skeptics and disbelievers, they'll let you look around if you just make it clear that that's really all you want to do. If you come walking in the door with 10 people and 5 boxes of equipment and say, we're ghost hunters, can we look around your bar? Naturally, the owner's going to say no, because it would disturb things too much. But, you can either go in and not announce yourself and work as a solo investigator, or you can contact management ahead of time and get permission.
So what's the proper way to handle a paranormal investigation?
That's a big question. That's about 3/4 of the book. Couple of things that I like to see done, and a lot of people do this, some people don't. One is, I think it's really a good idea to do a lot of background research before you go. A lot of background research. And this includes not only looking into legends and myths about a place.
Now you're talking about historical locations right now.
Yeah, it could be that, or it could be, somebody's living in a house in Benicia and they've got strange things going on and they don't know nothing about the house's history. But you can investigate, you can research the title of the house.
So how would they go about doing that?
You can go to county records, which are public, and you can find out who owned that house going right back to the day it was brand new. You can do that. These are public records. So you can find out if maybe it was owned by somebody famous. You might go back and find out that the owner, 30 or 40 years ago was some guy named Jim Jones, and then you can try to research Jim Jones, and you might find out that he was a serial killer or something like that. Or, and this gives you a clue to where to go with your research. Once you identify the personality of a ghost, then it might be a good idea to talk to people at the scene, the witnesses, then the client, and find out what they think is going on. If they get the impression there's a female entity present, that is kind of in conflict with your investigation that you learned about a male serial killer who lived there. So you have to kind of resolve that a little bit. Maybe you've got 2 ghosts there. Maybe the people who live there think it's a female, but in reality it's a male. So you have to look into all this. I think it's wise to do all this background research because you can focus your investigation better. If you learn that there was in fact a female entity that died in the house a month after a child died in the house, that would give you a good idea that maybe there's some reason why that female is still there. Maybe she thinks she's still taking care of her sick child. That would be a good thing to use in focusing your EVP investigation. You can start asking questions, especially if you know the entity's name from your historical research. Instead of going in and say, can you tell me your name? You might get the ghost's attention better if you can go and say, Emily, I know you're here and I know why you're here.
Excellent.
And I want to talk to you about this. Right away you'll get the attention of that ghost. So I think you get a better response. Plus you can ask more pointed questions. And a lot of times we'll go in and we'll ask, why are you here? And instead of asking that question, you can say, I believe I know why you're here. You're looking after your sick child, aren't you? And then you might get a better response from it that way. So basically what I'm saying is background research can make a real big difference there. Interviewing witnesses is always difficult to do. We've all talked to people at different locations and got kind of conflicting stories or vague stories. But you can talk to as many people you can at a location, but ultimately that process of interviewing people kind of gets focused onto one person who's had the most experiences or seems to be best at describing those experiences. And that would help you to focus your investigation too. And once you get all this together, then you have to decide if you want to use technical devices or the stuff we like to use, dowsing rods, pendulums, or just your psychic intuition. And that's what I use mostly. I use my psychic abilities that are backed up with audio and infrared video. And that's what I go with. I don't haul in a whole bunch of cameras. Generally, I set one up like this on a tripod and kind of aim it at a space I'm investigating in hopes that it might pick up something that I don't see, or the audio on the camera might pick up something that my hand-carried audio recorder won't pick up. Because ghosts actually manifest, the audio that we pick up from ghosts is actually something they create on the electronics of the device itself. They don't generate sound as I am right now. It doesn't pass through air and then hit a microphone. They basically bypass the microphone, I believe, and just imprint on the electronics. So one device might pick up the audio and another will not.
I found that I get more voices on the video camera than I did on the digital recorder.
Yeah, that's true. And I think it's because this is generating a stronger electromagnetic field. And they're using that. I'm not a big believer in EMF, however. I have to say that I don't believe EMF devices, the K2 meter and the tri-field meter, are very useful at all. Have you had much experience with those things?
We use them on our tour.
Yeah.
And mostly it's just, well, because our tour is about fun, but it's very visual. So my thinking is any kind of gadget, whether it's a K2 in there, it's easy to have false readings with.
Yeah.
But my whole goal is to get people to open up to their abilities, like you and I have, and everybody has. So a pendulum, rods, a K2 meter, get people to focus and look at something. And from there, then they can start using, well, what's the picture behind that in your mind? What are you getting? But K2s, I'm not big on that.
The problem with the EMF meters is that they are sensitive to a very broad range of frequencies, and so you get a lot of false positive signals. And you can get signals from electric cars that drive down the street. If we were using an EMF meter in this room and someone drove down the street with an electric car, we would get a signal. Okay. You can get it from security devices. You can get it from even other equipment you're using. Like if you have 5 video cameras going in a room you're investigating and you walk in with an EMF meter, anything you get on the EMF meter is probably going to be false positive. So it's a very non-specific device. Now it's possible that a ghost could trigger a signal on the thing. Yes, that's very likely. The trouble is you can't distinguish that from signals from other non-paranormal sources. So that's why I don't put much faith in EMF meters.
Well, so how do you feel, because we've used the EMF and everything will be calm and there's no lights lit up except that first green light. And then you start talking and then you start like connecting and then all of a sudden you're getting responses and it's going up to red.
Well, that could be ghostly activity. As long as to accept it as such, you have to verify that there are no extraneous sources of other EMF fields around. Like you have to make certain that nobody parked in your driveway with an electric car running, for instance. Or the guy next door is not running his ham radio and talking to somebody in South Africa.
Interesting, yes.
Well, if you can verify that, that's part of the scientific process, is making certain that your measurement is unbiased and uncontaminated by other sources. That's a precept of science. And if you could do that, then those lights on that K2 meter may in fact be an indication of something paranormal.
But wouldn't that be almost impossible?
It's tough. And that's why people who tell us that they're doing scientific investigations and walk around like the paranormal cops used to. There was one fellow who had a little device, a frame he'd hold, it had an EMF meter on it, an audio recorder, and a video recorder, and a still camera right underneath it. He'd walk around with all these electronic gadgets, and he'd be looking for these lights flashing on his EMF meter. Well, he's generating all these EMF fields that will give him false positive signals. So
I want you to explain when people say, "Oh, we investigate in a scientific manner," exactly what would that be?
Okay, well, virtually nobody is doing scientific investigations of paranormal phenomena for a couple of reasons. One is that people don't understand the limitations of their equipment. They don't understand the concepts of false positive signals. They don't understand that you have to verify that you don't have contamination of any signal that you get. You also have to establish the validity of the device you use. That means you've got to prove that the device you're using can be triggered by something paranormal. And that's hard to do, really hard to do. So right away our hands may be tied a bit when we use the technical approach. Okay, you've also got to be able to corroborate what you found. If you get your K2 meter, all the lights go on when you ask a question, did you murder your wife? All the lights go on. Well, what corroboration do you have of that? If there's no historical information about that sort of thing going on in this location, you don't have historical corroboration. If you don't also have something on still or infrared video or audio at that same moment, then these lights going on don't mean very much. Okay, so you've got to have corroboration. You've got to establish the validity of the device that you're using. Another thing that kind of ties our hands is you can't establish a control group with paranormal investigations. You just can't do that. So the bottom line is you can't be strictly scientific in paranormal investigation. It's almost like social sciences. You can't be strictly scientific in social science. There's a lot of sciences you can't be strictly scientific. You can't be scientific in history, for instance. You just can't do it. So we have to recognize that and stop saying that we're doing scientific investigations. Instead, we have to say that we are doing technical investigations that have high validity for reflecting paranormal activity. We're doing technical investigations because there's nothing wrong with using technical devices as long as we understand their limitations and that we try to corroborate and validate whatever signals we get.
I think too with the gadgets, and people are just staring at these boxes, and they're staring, even at dowsing rods, they're just staring at. They're missing what could be going on all around them.
Yeah.
And
right.
if you don't use your God-given gifts, everybody has them, you're missing a huge part.
Yeah.
The paranormal. It's, it's not the gadgets, it's opening up. But it's, you need to look around you when you're
exactly.
in a location.
I'm a real big advocate of using technical devices to support a psychic investigation. People ask me about how many EVP recordings do you have at home on your computer and things like that. And I have to tell them I don't have that many because my purpose really is the experience. And my purpose is not to get a lot of what you might call scientific evidence to convince skeptics or disbelievers. That's not my goal. A lot of paranormal groups say on their websites that one of their purposes, their mission statement, is to obtain irrefutable proof of life after death.
Good luck.
I don't.
Wow, that'd be great.
I'll tell you someday, okay? But, for now, I'm content for the experience. I want to have the experience. So I'm not equipment heavy. One of the things I like about the dowsing rods is it is very simple. Very simple. It doesn't involve generating its own electromagnetic field. Okay, you just hold it in your hands and it gives you these really nice signals. And when I use them, I try to project myself into the environment and create this cloud of inviting a spirit to communicate with me.
Yes.
And then they come through and they'll start moving those rods. But you're so right. You've got to get kind of outside of the technical thing.
You do. It's funny, I joke, but when we do our tours, we give people all the stuff, and so people have K2 meters, and so we're going, and you're outside going on the street, and I swear, and I think you guys do it on purpose, but when they get into the middle of an intersection, they're in the middle of the street, they go off, and everybody stops. And I'm like, no! And I jokingly say, don't stop, tell them to come with you, go to the corner, get out of the street. But every single time, and they stop, and they're looking at this thing. And, we go into a shop, and I say, now don't just look at this, but look around, because sometimes you'll see things that are very small, but there's no explanation for it. So look around you, open up your ears, your eyes, you're smelling, the energy going out there. You need to look.
That's right.
It's the whole experience.
I don't know if you've seen the investigation that Jeff was on an investigation with us at the Star Mansion
in
Vallejo.
Yeah,
It's no longer a bed. We were the only team to be able to go into the Star Mansion in Vallejo. It was a bed and breakfast to do a paranormal investigation. And it now,
Private residence?
well, Dennis bought it back.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
actually, he sold it and bought it back. Oh, excuse me. He sold it and now he's the manager or whatever, but it's not a bed and breakfast, so I don't know how he could be a manager, but he's no longer owns it. It's not running right now as a bed and
It's
breakfast.
too bad because it was a beautiful place.
Oh my God, but what I wanted to tell you was I have that. I edited it and I put it on YouTube, and I'll have to,
Yeah.
you can either go over there or I'll post it on your page. But my question is the rods. When you were doing the rods, you and Karen and I think it was you and Karen. Anyway, and Lewis had his recorder,
Uh-huh.
and then me playing it back and listening to it with my earphones. About 8 times, the responses to the rods, whether it was yes or no responses, I got an EVP that said yes or no, and it was the exact same response to the rods.
See, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about, where you can get corroboration between two modalities of investigating. That's really good proof that you've got ghostly activity.
Well, it's
going
on that video that we
Cool.
did.
Yeah. That's a great place in Blair. It's too bad it's no longer a B&B, because these haunted mansions that are B&Bs, that's a good place to go and spend the night. It's legal to walk around all night and do an investigation.
Yeah.
I had the Myrtles in St. Francisville all to myself one night.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That was great. That's supposed to be one of the most haunted places in America.
I was there.
Yeah. Well, I got there on a Sunday. They knew I was coming, and it turns out that there was a couple, 2 people who were also going to stay there that night, but they got scared. They left even before sundown. I guess it's beautiful though,
Yeah.
and you walk around, and I guess they knew the stories, and they were just getting a little bit freaky, so they took off. And so I just had the whole place to myself that night, and I roamed all through that place.
Oh my God.